Good evening, and thanks for joining us again this evening. We have the great honor to have Mike Johnson. He is the fire chief for the Ebbetts Pass Fire District with us here tonight. And we were talking just before we started rolling. He's been here 7 years now. Congrats. It seems just like, yeah, you haven't aged a bit.
Oh, thanks a lot. I'm sure someone would probably argue that, John, but I appreciate it.
Well, I guess this is, we're getting into the belly of the beast for fire season, aren't we? I mean, it's getting there.
Absolutely.
So it's time for a little bit of an update. And also, you talked a little about is, how many, was it 2 years ago now for Measure A, or was it 1 year ago? Is it how many?
It passed in May of 2019.
Okay.
So
it's
hit our
2 years.
mark.
Yeah,
Yes.
2 year mark. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Measure A was a supplemental funding measure for the Ebbetts Pass Fire District. And I think that, you know, it's a little bit of an update. You want to do a little bit of an update on a little bit on that, and how's things going?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. Yeah, the Measure A essentially was an augmentation of our initial advanced life support programs. There was two.
Mm-hmm.
One was passed in 1998, which was a paramedic engine program. And what it meant was we put a paramedic firefighter on the fire truck so it would respond back in 1998, believe it or not, that long ago. And then again in 2004, the community passed a tax measure that would actually get us into the ambulance transport business.
Right.
And so those two were built on a principle of a flat rate with no inflation. And so, you know, by the time we hit that 2019 mark, we had stretched those 1998 and 2004 dollars as far as they could go. And we were running at quite a deficit.
You mean those dollars from 20 years ago didn't quite purchase the same?
Shocking, right? No, just kidding. Yeah, we were running at a deficit, and the forefathers knew that from design.
Yeah.
And we knew that would be part of it. And we were just so fortunate when we went out for Measure A that we were able to work closely with our community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, John, it was just so refreshing as a fire chief. And you said I've been here 7, but I haven't been here since 1998, right? The people that have been working hard for the district, building that relationship with the community, being paramedics for our community all those years, they laid this foundation of trust and working with the community and doing this service for all those years.
A little question on that. I know this is kind of a jump in the middle of it, but now you guys actually predated then. When did the state mandate mandatory EMT roles? You know, when was that? I mean, so you guys predated that.
Well, we were back when they started doing EMT roles, in the fire service. Started way back in the 70s.
Oh,
right?
it did. Okay.
And then it kind of evolved into paramedicine, which is still the highest level of street medicine we can do later on. So you'll see some California agencies that have been doing transports way back in the early 80s, maybe even the late 70s.
Yeah.
And we got into it, like I mentioned, we've been doing EMS roles since the inception of the fire district back in 1965.
Got it.
And then eventually stepped up into the highest level of ALS in 1998.
Yeah, got it. Wonderful. Now, those funds from Measure A, what did they specifically go for? What is it?
Well, number one is it made the ambulance program whole.
Okay.
In other words, we have 2 ambulances and we're out in this rural community.
Yeah.
35 miles away from one emergency room or another, and it takes one ambulance a lot longer to travel that distance and get all the way back to the district, rather than when you're in a city, you may be 2 or 3 miles from a hospital.
Right.
So take that into account, and then so we've always staffed 2 ambulances. And that had augmented when one was gone, another ambulance would show up to your house. And that happens about 144 times a year. So you hopefully, running the odds there at about 700 transports, 140 of them were running simultaneously. So we felt like it was the community's choice to decide, hey, do we want to, essentially augment this system so it could continue to be 2 ambulances, or would we accept a lesser service at one ambulance when we couldn't staff the other one? In other words, somebody calls in sick, or we're essentially drawn down for any number of reasons. So we were blessed that they supported the concept of continuing that model. Now, John, we did take a couple of steps with the community that we felt was necessary because it is their fire district and is their ambulance service. We're just essentially custodians of their service. So we surveyed them and showed them, the various options that could be possible if they wanted to. Everything from do nothing except a lower service to open up a whole new fire station. And
Right.
within that spectrum, we landed on what we would say is an increase in service, and we added one firefighter paramedic each and every shift, and we have 3. So this puts a
Nice.
third person on the fire truck, and the National Fire Protection Association will actually tell you how much more effective your firefighting ability is then. But in those drawdown times, when we have 2 ambulances gone about 30 to 40 times a year, we've already got that paramedic in hand. We can step up and put a third
Right.
ambulance in if we
Right.
could just
If
marry
you-
them up with an EMT.
Yeah.
So when the cards are down, we got one more tool in the toolbox.
And I guess so people understand is let's say you had 2 ambulances, say the ambulances were stuck down the hill or something, or they say they were both on rolls. Then for an ambulance response time, you would have to get a mutual aid request for somebody to come, correct? I mean, so
Absolutely
the
correct.
response times could be significantly longer. I mean,
Right. Our partnering agency, I guess you would say, our sister agency, the agency that manages the north and south zones of Calaveras, and we're in the east, is American Legion Ambulance. And both Ebbetts Pass and American Legion are what we call system cars, right?
Right.
So if you are, for example, you live in Angels Camp, and Ebbetts Pass Fire District shows up to your door to provide services because we're a Calaveras service car.
and you were the closest bus to that.
For could be a myriad of
Yeah.
reasons, right? Maybe
Yeah.
we're coming back
Yeah.
from Mark Twain and
Right.
we're making that turn onto Highway 4, and dispatch says, "Hey, you're closer. We need you to go take care of this." And we don't mind because we get that same mutual aid service up the hill when we're drawn down. So it really works out well.
So the other benefit for Measure A then was it actually helped put more assets on the ground for the whole county in some ways. I mean, right? I mean, a little bit. I mean, you have a little bit of there's more resources on the board for.
You
For
can look
everybody.
at
Yeah.
can look at it that way. I mean,
Yeah.
we still have the contract that we bid on for
Right.
the East Zone.
Of course.
It remains the same regardless if we
Yeah.
have a lot of ambulances or one. They
Right.
say, hey, you just got to maintain the contract.
Yeah.
And we've always, with 2 ambulances, have well exceeded the minimums for that. We're very proud of that. We don't believe the standards are for us. We want 100% all the time for our community. And, we'd probably fare pretty well with an ALS fire engine and 1 ALS ambulance, but we want to make sure we can get
Yeah.
there and transport people when we need to.
One of the things we wanted to mention on this one is looking back a little bit on that is that I think for a lot of the locals, budgets are tighter and everything else for a lot of, but I think one of the things that I think is a really nice thing about the Ebbetts Pass Fire District is that because it has a high percentage of second homes, seasonal homes, at times it helps subsidize the services the locals are able to get in your district. Is that correct? Is that at times?
So when you're talking about like a household that's full-time versus half-time,
Yeah,
those
yeah.
type of things,
Yeah.
I would say that from time to time, if we're hitting surge capacity, like just this last weekend,
Yeah. Yeah.
we were full and then some, right?
Oh, boy.
I think a few Airbnbs may have been over what we would call 2.5 people in a
Oh, I
household.
would think so. Yes.
So we take it that it's kind of like a roller coaster. I mean,
Yeah,
we
it
have our
depends.
off seasons
Correct.
too.
Correct.
So if you're talking
Yeah.
early spring or late fall, before the snow flies, we're probably at a pretty low
Yeah.
number.
Yeah.
And then when we hit the big winter break, when everybody's up skiing and everything else, or in the
Everything's
summer,
rocking and rolling.
guess
huh?
what?
Yep.
Hey, that's
Yep.
that's the way it goes. So yeah, we take it with the ebb and flow of it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, which I'd like to mention now is with those programs, is there is no out-of-pocket ambulance cost.
Yes, explain that for people who are new to the area.
Right. So that was essentially part of the original package. Is if you are a resident or a homeowner, one or the other in Ebbetts Pass Fire District, and you are part of that program,
Yeah.
because there is additional taxes you're paying, right? So what are you getting for that extra tax? We talk about making sure you have the ambulance piece of it, but most of our insurance, and I know mine doesn't cover 100% of ambulance service. Whatever you're responsible for, whatever that number is, it's covered under that program. So that works out really well, especially considering that it is considered to be a paid piece of the ambulance bill, which
Right.
for some people, if you're having a hard year in your medical bills, it can be put towards your annual medical deductible. So it hasn't steered us wrong yet, and I think it's
Yeah.
a good value on both ends.
Yeah. as we're getting into the bulk of fire season, as we're getting into fire season now, where how do you, I mean, how the state of things? I know we got heat warnings coming up for this next few days. Are you seeing? What are you looking at as far as in your district and around? I mean, are fuel moisture loads really low already, or how are we looking?
I think if you've been watching the news or following everything, I mean, the water levels in the reservoirs are really low this year. We didn't have a big water year. We had a big snow event, but that was about it up in our area. So really, our state here in Calaveras County is about the same as everywhere else they're talking about in the state. Maybe returning to somewhat of a drought condition.
Right.
As far as being a local fire chief, things that I recommend to our community and people that are watching today is, hey, really go after your defensible space, working on that. CAL FIRE's added some more great information on, how to do it even better this year.
Right.
So visit their website. They have 3 zones.
The whole 100-foot thing?
Yeah, they've added in a zone 0, which is 0 to 5 feet, which is no combustible material, is a recommendation. It's not a law, but it's a recommendation, which is a good one. The 5 to 6 feet out to 30, raking down to bare mineral soil and limbing the trees, and then of course that last 31 feet out to 100, no deeper than 4 inches of duff on the ground, which is the forest litter, if you will.
Right.
It's just some great guidelines. So it's like, go get back to the basics, maintain those things. Those help firefighters tremendously. Another thing that's really become something in the last few years is the public safety power shutdown. PG&E has shut down a lot of the overhead power lines, which my home is on that part of that grid. And I've started to see, as far as professionally, are people getting more and more used to just powering by generator during those times?
Right.
And some are done appropriately and some inappropriately. If you're running extension cords under doorways that can be pinch points for power, create heat, you could cause a fire that way. Or overloading a generator, or even worse, not using a proper electrician to install a system that actually feeds your whole house with a generator.
Right.
And you can even dangerously backfeed the actual part of the grid, which is dangerous.
Yeah.
And then when the grid comes back on, it'll spin that generator in the opposite direction and catch it on fire. So, but it's another level of
do you think? I think that if there's a good side to that, is I think with the advent of more and more electric vehicles and everything else, do you think people are more current conscious now, do you think, in some ways? Do you think, or do you see that at all, or now? Is it?
I know in the firefighting world we've become more current conscious with emergency vehicles on accidents and high voltage and high voltage lines and where they run and how to keep responders safe and, essentially provide a proper rescue of somebody's trapped. So I think people are, but again, emergency or electric powered vehicles going up into the rural areas, be aware of where your PSPSs are. Your destination resort may or may not have backup power too, right? So.
As far as one of the things I wanted to touch on a little bit was, I know that there's been some fuel breaks done. Some of the shaded fuel. They've been working on some of the fuel breaks and stuff. Now, how are some of the fuel break situation around in Ebbetts Pass in the district?
Well, I'm very, very pleased with the amount of work that a lot of these agencies are putting forward. Right. There's some state funding. There's some federal funding. There's some PG&E funding. I mean, there's even Caltrans has been doing clearing around the edges of Highway 4 there. Roadways are usually the cause of about 75% of fires. Right. So that's a really big one. We have the Fire Safe Council does a fantastic job and I call them, they're more, sometimes they can be even a clearinghouse, right? So they have somebody who's interested in putting in for it, maybe like a homeowners association or a specific group. Cal-Am is another one. The RCD is another one, and they're all working to try to connect those special projects and the community wildfire preparedness plan. Right. And that's an outline that's essentially managed through Calaveras Office of Emergency Services, And all those pieces, all those cogs work together. CAL FIRE, Forest Service,
Right.
and it's amazing the tremendous amount of work they're doing, and they're continuously trying to levy and bring in that revenue to get work done.
So, I mean, it's not that there's a lot of good news on fire stuff, but wouldn't you say that the district and even some of the counties is in a better shape with some of the fuel breaks than where we were, say, pre-Butte fire or something like that? I think is that safe to say?
A Butte fire, just some of the lines that they put in to go ahead and protect some of the communities was a huge enhancement within itself.
Right.
And it's unfortunate in the sense that we had the Butte fire, but since it did happen, big conflagration fires like the Butte fire a lot of times bring focus onto areas that have those recent burns, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's,
I guess the one real ugly question on, I had some family members that lived up in Paradise, and one of them lost their home and stuff there. And one of the things they said there is that, people always seem to want to go down the hill to get away, and I think would you say that in sometimes the Ebbetts district, let's say we have a catastrophic fire coming through, it's a little more inconvenient, but you can always go up, right?
John, that's
you
a
can
great
always,
point.
so you don't have these pinch points, traffic, because they had traffic pinch points that from some of the, after action, some of that could have been eliminated if people would have just gone away, just to get away from the fire. Maybe not where they wanted to go, but it was a safe way to exit.
John, it was firsthand experience for me. I was working my way from Ebbetts Pass Fire District. The Butte Fire was putting up a tremendous plume of smoke. Even with my experience, I wasn't sure exactly where the fire was running just because there's so much smoke in the air. Mm-hmm. I was on Highway 4 working my way to San Andreas to get to the county seat to engage with the emergency operations center.
Yeah.
That's my job, right? That's what I'm supposed to do. Yep. So. But I was in a line of cars, and I was very concerned that the fire may have overtaken a part of the highway, and we were in a situation of entrapment with civilians.
Right.
The good news is, John, that wasn't the case. It was literally a traffic jam. Following up on that, what I came to understand was people would rather take the shorter route down the hill, but in turn, they cause the traffic jam. So here's my advice, and I know we don't have all the time to talk about this today, but number one, get yourself on Calaveras Alert. We have some information. Calaveras Office of Emergency Services has put together a great plan, but if you don't sign up for it, you don't get notifications.
Right.
Along with that program is a very intuitive evacuation route suggestion.
Got it.
And then, so if all those things are not possible and the grid naturally goes down, don't wait till the last minute, obviously. Have a contingency plan, a go box already done. Medical people that need extra help, you're going to need to plan for extra time, right?
Right.
And I say the rule of thumb is this: go in the opposite direction of the smoke.
Right.
So if the smoke is thicker and darker down Highway 4, we'll just say westbound Highway 4, and go to Bear Valley.
Right.
Now Bear Valley, has cell service and things like that. Go there and reevaluate the situation. Get some more situational awareness. Call that family member. And if you need to top off with gas and go all the way over the pass.
You still got a station there. You still,
you can do it. And we just want people to be safe, and we just want them to get out of harm's way. There's a pretty good likelihood if fire does come up into that canyon, it's going to be coming up.
Right.
Not necessarily racing down from Highway 4, but nevertheless, go the opposite direction of where the smoke
direction of smoke.
There you go.
There we go. All right. Anything else on this fire year? It's little.
John, something that has kind of come to me over the last couple of years, and really didn't initially, but I've thought about more and more is just a suggestion to folks. If you're enjoying, warming fires this time of year, or you're doing outdoor cooking.
Right.
I would suggest, and it's not a rule, but I would suggest avoid things that create embers like wood. If you can, use a propane-powered gas, to cook your s'mores, and something that turns off with a knob, right? So if I turn it off with a knob,
it's out.
Within a minute, it's cool, and I go to bed, and it's because a lot of times those wood fires, they look out, but they're still hot down in there, right?
Yeah.
Same with charcoal. We got to dispose of that properly, naturally. But maybe if an option is to cook on a gas grill during fire season, especially one like this, maybe give that a shot.
Give that a shot, huh? Yeah. You were talking about a couple little structural things that the fire districts in Calaveras County have done. What's some of the changes there that you're kind of working as a group more now? Is it to
Right.
Is that okay?
So a little bit of the history of Calaveras County is we do have a fire chiefs association that's
Right.
been around for over 20 years, and it's a fantastic group. It does a lot of great networking, but we felt the need to have something that gave the unincorporated fire districts of Calaveras County a greater unity.
Right.
So we created a joint powers authority, and we call it the Calaveras County Fire Joint Powers Authority. Right out of the gate, some people go, wow, it sounds like a consolidation effort, and it really isn't. It's simply there to help strengthen each district to work together to get
Right.
the things that they need.
Right.
While we have 9 different unincorporated fire districts, that serve that part of the county, we all do a lot of the same things, right?
Yeah.
So when you need a fire truck mechanic, you need them. Everybody needs it, right?
Right.
When you need the protective clothing,
Right.
and
Everybody needs it.
we all need it.
Yeah.
So rather than have 9 small fire districts that are competing for the best deal or the best contract for some of these services, honestly, when we start working together, we can put together a pretty good contract. We can get a better deal and leverage something that's a better value for our Calaveras County
Right.
taxpayers.
Right.
So when our dollars go farther, our tax dollars go farther, we're able to do other things with the funding, right? So
Right.
we're working together, and it's a legally bound group. Anyone can opt in or out if they don't like doing buttons, following a contract one way or another. We do have an alternative funding group, and they look into various types of ways to continue to fund the local fire districts and enhance that. I know there's a citizen initiative that's in the works right now, and they're working on how are we going to take the next step and provide even better service for the communities of unincorporated Calaveras County. So super excited, super proud that we have that, and it's relatively new. I think it's going
Very
on
cool.
almost 2 years.
One little thing on that is how's staffing? Are the local districts? How are you on new firefighters and stuff? Is there a consistent need, or are you guys doing pretty good?
Oh, I think there's always going to be a consistent need. And, being in these uniforms and being told how to wear your hair and doing things like this, it's that when you and I were young,
Yeah.
I mean, being in that institution, that was great. There's a lot more flexibility in the workforce now.
Yeah.
You can work
Yeah.
remotely in a lot of jobs now. So these jobs that still is my heart's desire, I find that there's less and less that are being consumed by that as young folks coming into the industry.
Interesting.
So,
Right.
and that's my 2 piece of it. And fire service just continues to need more and more people to put out some of these bigger and bigger fires.
Yeah.
So I would say there's a tremendous need. We're fortunate to have Columbia College here not too far that has an accredited fire academy.
Yeah.
And we can pull on some of those things. But now is a great time to join the fire service at any level.
Yeah.
And we welcome it. We hope to see more and more folks join the fire service.
Do you have a print? Do you work with Columbia as a print? How does training go for your district? You always have some young people in there and those mixed in?
Yeah, we do. We have an intern group,
Okay.
which are essentially, they may not be accredited firefighters yet, but we have task books that are in-house driven.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we all answer to the state fire marshal as far as where we get the standard for curriculum
Right.
to say, hey,
Right.
you're
Right.
qualified as a firefighter or a
Yeah.
person that drives the fire truck.
Yeah.
So.
I guess and I was talking to one of the a Cal Fire captain on this, and we talked about this, and it was kind of, this may be an ugly fire season. Everything points to where, we all remember now how last October and November were. Just horrific. It seems like every year has been. One of the things he said is you guys get tired in your jobs as well. And he was saying is the longer they can go into the season without having to, you know, to play whack-a-mole and all, if they can go, the longer they can go into a season without having to go big campaign fires,
Right.
the better he says everybody is. So I think he was trying to say is everybody can be extra careful now, because if they can get them, because I mean, you figure tanker guys are tired, everybody's tired, but the time you get to when it's real go time in the fire season, everybody's worn out.
Right.
And I don't want to say that bad, because this is your job, this is what you do, but also I think, is there some truth to that? If you can keep in essence the troops fresh until into September or something like that, I mean, you get better results on some of those campaign fires, or is that out of?
You're absolutely right, John. No,
Yeah.
And it's just like with any high intensity job, and it doesn't matter if you're a soldier, right?
Right.
And let's just say you're deployed as a soldier,
Yeah.
and you're overseas. Let's just say that may or may not be the greatest example, but during that time of deployment, as you become weary and tired, by the time you get back to R&R,
Right.
it's a strain, right? It's a strain on the logistics people to get you
Yeah.
to and from.
Yeah.
Fire season's no different. So
Yep.
the more deployments,
Yep.
the more activity, the more fires to combat,
Yeah.
if you will, the more your firefighters, your essentially your citizen soldiers, if you will,
Oh,
out
boy.
there doing it.
Yeah.
They're getting tired too.
Yeah.
And they got to get behind a wheel of a vehicle to get
Yeah.
back home, to get to take their days off and do those types of things. Now, what some people don't realize is in situations where the people that are working to continue the level of service to run 911 calls everywhere else,
Yeah.
they're working extra a
Over.
lot of times,
Right. Right.
and so it's a compounded challenge.
Yeah.
And we try to address it the best we can. But you're right, everybody's exhausted.
So let's say you have some guys that you send on a campaign fire. Will you bring them in and have them work locally for a little bit? I mean, or do they cycle back out and move on to the next one? I mean, how does it usually work?
For a local fire agency like Ebbetts
Yeah.
Pass, it's about 7 days, and we rotate the crews.
Okay.
And that's
Okay.
the way we like to do it. But it could be a lot longer in some situations.
Right.
CAL FIRE, the U.S. Forest Service, your local fire agencies, it's just such an interagency effort.
Yeah.
And it is so well
Yeah.
coordinated from the very
Yeah.
top. And we're all doing our part, right? And sometimes it's 7 days for the local guys, but the CAL FIRE guys maybe a lot longer. The Forest Service guys maybe
They just may be moving from
long.
campaign to campaign to campaign, huh?
Could be.
Yeah.
And so we all operate under similar but
Right.
slightly different
Right.
regulations. But
Yeah.
it could be a long season, that's for sure.
Thanks for what you do.
Oh.
I mean that sincerely. Thanks for what you do for the community, and your life's work. And if everybody can be real careful this year,
Yes, sir.
let's get us through. Right? Isn't that
Wouldn't that be? Yeah. I tell you what, it would be quite a blessing to have such
Yeah.
a dry year so early on, and maybe we could make it something other than a tremendous fire season. I'd like that a lot.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.